For over 35 years, Todd Garner has overseen blockbuster films like Con Air, Anger Management, Triple X, 13 Going on 30, and the Mortal Kombat franchise.
Why are they letting you make these movies?
Join Todd as he shares tips and stories from the front lines of producing in Hollywood.
I'm Adam Sandler.
I'm Rebel Wilson.
This is Jeff Probst.
I'm Kaylee Cuoco.
I'm Eli Roth.
This is Marlon Wayans.
Hey, it's Ed Helms.
This is Shay Mitchell.
Hey everybody, this is Kevin James, and this is The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide with Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
What a combination.
Welcome to The Producer's Guide, where we deep dive into the creative mind shaping today's entertainment industry. I'm Todd Garner, and today we have a very, very special episode, a bonus episode, because I have an extraordinary guest. He's been a monumental force in the world of video games and now in motion pictures. My guest today is Ed Boon, the creative director at NetherRealm Studios and co-creator of the iconic Mortal Kombat franchise. Ed's journey began in the bustling city of Chicago, Illinois, where his passion for video games was ignited by classic arcade hits like Defender, Missile Command, and Asteroids. With a solid foundation in math and computer science, Ed embarked on his career at Williams Electronics, where he initially programmed pinball machines. But it was in 1990 that Ed shifted to video games, marking the beginning of an incredible franchise. In 1991, alongside a talented team, Ed co-created Mortal Kombat, a game that would revolutionize the fighting genre and capture the imaginations of millions of fans worldwide. Since its launch in 1992, Mortal Kombat has not only become a cultural phenomenon, but has sold over 100 million copies globally. Ed continues to lead the charge at NetherRealm Studios, not just with Mortal Kombat, but also with bringing the DC universe to life with the acclaimed Injustice series. Ed is a very, very dear friend of mine and an incredible collaborator, and I am so fortunate to have him working with me on the Mortal Kombat franchise. I first started playing Mortal Kombat in a 7-Eleven in San Fernando when I was in early stages of college. I just graduated from high school. I was absolutely obsessed with it. I've chased the franchise down over the years as I got to become a producer and was fortunate enough to be brought onto the franchise by Richard Brenner. And I could not be more grateful to him. And so today I wanted to talk to Ed about the formation of the game, how he developed it, how he came up with the characters, and what his experience was from his perspective of making Mortal Kombat 2. Enjoy. All right. I'm here with my good friend, creative partner, mentor, guru, Ed Boon. Hello, my friend. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm happy to be able to talk Mortal Kombat and I don't know, any other movie business stuff.
Absolutely. Well, this is a podcast that covers all parts of the business. So I want to start with gaming and your history and how you got into the position where you could even think of creating something like Mortal Kombat. I know you grew up in Chicago. Tell me about growing up in Chicago and were you always interested in games? I know you started at a pinball company, but just give me a little bit of your background leading up to coming up with the idea for this incredible franchise.
Like you said, I was born in Chicago in Rogers Park and basically lived in the Chicago area my whole life. I still do. And with the exception of 4 years in Champaign-Urbana, which is University of Illinois, I went there for 4 years, got a degree in math and computer science. And when I was about 16 or 17, that's when the first flow of big explosion of arcade games came out. Defender, Robotron, Missile Command, Pac-Man, Asteroids, all those things just became my obsession. And not just playing them, I always had an interest in how they were made. It was, it was at least 50-50 in terms of my fascination with them as how fun they are to play, but how they were made. And about the same time, the Apple II computer was coming out, and this computer called the Atari 800. It was like a home computer. And for some reason, I went to the Atari. I think it had better sounds or something like that, and started learning, the basic programming language. Really simple: 10 print, 20 go to 10. At some point, when I got a pixel on the screen and was able to manipulate it and define rules as to how it behaved, it was like it was like a thing that clicks in your mind of you suddenly realize the potential. I associate it with when somebody plays a note on the piano and then plays three of them together and there's a chord and then you just kind of suddenly the world of what could be done is revealed to you. And I had that same kind of feeling with computer programming and graphics in particular. I did that through high school, just stuck in a basement, just nerding out on computer programs and assembly language and things like that. Then I went to school for 4 years, studied that, but never during the course of when I was in school did I think this was going to be a job I could do. I thought it would be a really fun hobby that I'll do for the rest of my life, and would end up working for a bank or programming for a bank or something like that. And I actually sent out all my resumes that I sent out were for businesses that I didn't have a huge passion for, but I thought that's what you do when you're a computer programmer, and then you do your fun stuff in the basement. By chance, I guess, by luck, I had a little asterisk in the bottom of my resume that said strong interest in video games, and some headhunter saw that and sent it to a place called Williams Electronics, who were doing pinball machines at the time. And they called me up and they said, do you want to come for an interview? And I knew Williams Electronics from Defender and Stargate and Robotron, all these games that I was really into as in high school and in college. I actually scheduled my college schedule to have gaps in it so I can go play games. And
where did you play? Where was the venue?
This place called Spaceport. It was an arcade, a kind of typical arcade on either Green Street or Wright Street. But I remember it clearly because I could be found there a lot. Nice. And so I went in there thinking I was going for a job to program video games. And halfway into the interview, they said, no, this is for pinball machines. And my first question was, do people program pinball machines? Like I didn't even know that was an occupation. They said yes, and they said, are you still interested? I was like, absolutely. But in the back of my head, I was thinking, I knew they had a video game division, and I knew that's eventually where I wanted to go. But I had a lot of fun. I programmed pinball machines for 3-4 years. And then in about 1990, the department that was downstairs, the video game department, who I had made friends with, they were working on a game called Narc and Terminator 2. They were doing an arcade version with a gun. And I was always down there, checking out what they were doing. And finally, in 1990, I joined the video game department and was assigned a football game called High Impact Football. And I was one of the programmers on that. And that game did well. So we did a sequel to that called Super High Impact Football. And at the time, our technology was digitized graphics, right? Most games like Street Fighter or something, they would have an artist draw the characters on the screen, pixel by pixel. And it had a really cool anime kind of look. We were the, Midwest, gritty, we pointed a camera at real people and it came out, pixelated, but it looked like a person on the screen. That was the magic to the technology that Midway had. We said, oh my God, can you imagine a big characters like Street Fighter, even bigger, but with real people? And so we were doing experiments with throwing punches and kicks and whatnot and just seeing it on the screen. And at the time, we wanted to do a Van Damme video game. We wanted to make it called Van Damme the Video Game. When we saw the characters on the screen, we knew this is what we're going to do. And that was really marrying digitized graphics with fighting games being the big rage, marrying those two together, adding a story to it. So the characters weren't just mindless characters. They had rivalries, they had history, they came from different, it was inspired in a lot of ways by Enter the Dragon, like from all walks of life, all these characters coming in, and all the characters were inspired by movies that we had grown up with. There's you can I mean I can tell you I can show you exact references of Star Wars, Enter the Dragon, Bloodsport. There was at least 10 movies that had a profound effect on our very small team. It was just four guys basically, and that was really what led up to Mortal Kombat.
Were you a movie kid growing up? How did you get to being wanting to tell stories and wanting to give each of these characters backstories?
The influence of how the characters looked, a lot of it just came from movies. And but we always thought that there was a genericness to a lot of the characters that were in video games. They didn't have like a personality. They didn't have a history. Like I said, we had grown up seeing so many movies. And also the whole video game department, we had this I guess ritual of any time a big movie would come out, we'd all go that Friday night, go get dinner, see the movie, talk about it. And so it was just ingrained in our DNA, that storytelling would be a part of what we were going to generate. It wasn't just going to be costumes and characters and stuff like that. It was going to be storytelling. It's going to be secrets. It was going to be, just a ton of mystery. I always described Mortal Kombat as we should never have the player feel like they know everything about it. They should always think, what else is in there? What else is in that game? And that was a lot of the drive for the features we put in the game.
Who were the original four?
Of the creators of the game?
Yep.
Well, John Tobias and I, we were the ones who were we had the conversation that said, let's make this fighting game. Let's make it based on all these movies and all that. And
was he already with the video division of that company, or did you meet him there? How did that meeting happen?
The video game department had like 4 games being worked on at the same time. I was working on this football game called High Impact Football. John was working on a game called Smash TV. There was the Terminator team. There was there was just a bunch of groups. And like I said, everybody had lunch and whatever together. And John and I were having a discussion about, how cool would it be to have these characters in a digitized look with story, my big thing was I wanted, much wilder things that the characters can do. Right.
Right.
I want to teleport on come back on the other side. I want them to go invisible, do all this stuff. And it was much more fantasy based, much more a wilder experience. I think that coupled with the visuals that we had, again, that digitized look, people would always say that looks like a real person. That was our big visual thing. And then the violence, right? You add this violent element to it, and it just got so much attention that brought people in. And then when they saw the story, when they saw how cool these characters, the things they can do, that's what hooked them in.
Were the other 2 people already at the company, or did you recruit them?
No, they were literally John Tobias and John Bogle were in the next office from me. They shared an office. And Dan Forden was an audio guy who wrote all the the original music and all to it. He was, four offices down from me. And we, Dan and I had worked together for a number of years before that. A lot of pinball machines, a lot of video games. Yeah.
And do you think Enter the Dragon was sort of the North Star in terms of the plot and kind of the underlying idea of Mortal Kombat, the original game?
It was a big part of it, just because, again, it was an ensemble of a number of characters. I think Bloodsport was there, although Bloodsport was pretty recent. Enter the Dragon was, way back in the 70s.
Right.
But Bloodsport was a more recent entry into it. And again, the Johnny Cage character was going to be, the Frank Dux character from. So there was just a lot of, when Van Damme didn't work out, we had to come up with our own movie star who's a martial artist, and that's where Johnny Cage came from.
What was the first character you guys created?
The first character we put on screen was Johnny Cage. He had the simplest costume. It was basically the Van Damme look from Bloodsport, and no shirt and stuff like that. And the no shirt helped with us finding out how humans look.
Okay.
And so it was a lot to the realism of it. During that time, some of the backstories for Raiden and Liu Kang, and they had different names at the time, were just being kind of roughly fleshed out.
When you first started putting the game together and thinking about it as a commercial enterprise and actually putting it into the console, how many characters did you think you needed initially to get going?
I think we thought we needed 8, and we only ended up with 7. We had 6 characters when we first went on test. Every character except Sonya. Again, the expectation for this game, we were asked to do it in 6 months or something like that, which is unheard of. Games were usually about a year from beginning to end. And we said we'd do it because we were dumb and in our 20s and things like that.
We don't need sleep.
Yeah, exactly it. And we had a lot of energy, and we had something to prove. I think was a big part of it. From starting the game to putting it on test at an arcade was 5 months, which is ridiculous. And the crowd around the machine was ridiculous. It was, people had brought their friends over the weekend, and the crowd just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And when our management saw that, they said, there's something special here. Let's not rush it out the door. Add another character. So we added Sonya and put it on test about a month later. By that time, the arcade was getting phone calls saying, when are you going to bring back this Mortal Kombat game? And they were calling us saying, we're getting a lot of phone calls. It's bordering harassment, and
What's good to know is that the fans have started that way and never ended. Now, you said that part of the secret sauce was to videotape actual actors and then animate them. How did you put out that initial casting call?
John Tobias just happened to know a bunch of guys that he knew from high school who were really into martial arts.
Wow.
And they came in and showed that they could, do a spinning hook kick and do a sweep kick. And they lived in Chicago. They came to, they just drove down the Kennedy to where we were off of Addison. And one by one, we would just bring them in, each one for a day or two, capture, had the videotape running. That, we have a lot of footage of us just capturing.
I've seen a lot of it. One of my favorite ones was you off camera saying, it just feels like he needs something to pull him in, like, I don't know, like, get over here. the most iconic line in the franchise, just uttered off stage.
There was no design document that we were following. It was literally 4 guys in their 20s just coming up with ideas just off the top of their head. And that was the exact, like you said, the camera happened to be rolling, and I was, wouldn't it be cool? He shot a spear and pulled him in and says, get over here, and all that stuff like that. And, it was the wildest thing when we, to see that on film and knowing the origins of that idea and to see it come to life like that is really wild. But a lot of the ideas were absolute spur of the moment magic things.
Which character did you enjoy creating the most?
Scorpion by far. I believe that when we got that Scorpion move working in the game, that was like the moment that we knew that there was something special going on. We're going to do wilder things. We're not just going to throw fireballs. We're going to be pulling people in, teleporting, the fatalities and stuff like that. That was a big one too. But Scorpion's spear getting into the game and getting a free uppercut, like your character's dizzy after you, and you're like salivating to hit them, and they can't block you, was just I believe that was like a pivotal moment where we knew it's going to be something special.
And in that initial plan, you said there was no rules or no storyline. Did you have the Scorpion and Sub-Zero rivalry out of the gate? How did these backstories and rivalries evolve as you guys did that first 5 months of the game?
You know, what's fascinating to me about that first game was the stories were these very short sentences that would just, you'd see the character doing like a little animation, and written underneath them was, Lin Kuei, Shira Ryu, and, rivalry between them. But it was just that was the entire story.
Wow.
But players were so enamored by these characters that everything they read was suddenly, like the Bible. It was like it was, oh, this is fact. This is and they would also fill in the parts that weren't written in the game in their heads. And I bet you that, what the reason they have a rivalry is because of this, and that. Because, arcade games, we can't show rendered video. We can't show, the memory was one of the biggest challenges, was just trying to make the most out of the memory. So we had just this little text. And when you finish the game with a character, it would say, this is what happened to your character after they won the tournament. So there was 7 different outcomes that could happen. And players, it's funny because they don't realize how small of content we put in there for the story, but because it was these characters that do really cool stuff, that look really cool, and there is some kind of narrative put around it, players just dove right in, just emotionally. They just dove right into it.
Well, that leads me to the next question, which is, how has the community of Mortal Kombat's feedback influenced your choices for your games? And obviously, we'll talk about the movie in a minute, but how along the years of the games did community feedback affect the way you designed your characters and storylines?
The timing of the internet, I think, had a huge role in it. The first game, I don't think there was any kind of real mass mechanism for players to communicate with each other. So if somebody learned Sonya's fatality in Chicago, it wasn't like it is now, where the next day the whole country knows, right?
Right.
So it was much more of a mystery. It was much more, the reptile character was on some Saturday. I went into the art program and I took Scorpion's image and I slid the color bars over and turned him green and said, okay, I'm going to make a green ninja called Reptile. And I was in line at a drive-through at a KFC when that idea kind of hit. And by the time the day was over, he was in the game. It was ridiculous how fast you can come up with these things. Reptile was a true, like, first in terms of a hidden character in a game, certainly in a fighting game. And nobody could spread the word of how to do it. Everybody just had to figure it out for themselves. When MK2 came along, news groups started happening, and people started figuring out, oh, okay, I just did his fatality, and then people in California would know how to do it. And that pissed me off beyond belief, because we put so much work into these games that the spoiler concept was it didn't really come into play until everybody started talking. By the time Mortal Kombat 3 came out, Mortal Kombat 4, it was just part of what we had to work with. We tried to work around it. We tried to work through it, but we had to just kind of accept that. That's, I think, where the community started happening. That's where people who all loved Mortal Kombat and wanted to talk about it would go to news groups, and that groups of people in arcades, because you have a big crowd of people and everybody kind of got to know each other, and it was all around this arcade game that they all loved.
It's funny because the people do have a real sense of nostalgia for MK2 in the video game world, and probably it was because that was the first time they could all interact and really become a community. And so when people started filling those gaps in on those backstories and such, did you incorporate those the thirst for those backstories and the want for more? Were you able to start to say, okay, well, let's start filling that in? And how did that come about? How did you get those backstories out into the public?
We did it the same way as we did before, but when Mortal Kombat 1 was a huge hit, I think we got like maybe twice the amount of memory to make the second game. And we knew that story was a big part of it, so we leaned harder into it. Now, again, we couldn't do animated, like video, so to speak, but we were able to make more elaborate screens. I remember the big origin screen where there's a famous shot where Shang Tsung is like kneeling to Shao Kahn, and Shao Kahn is like kind of chastising him for failing, and this is your second chance, and all that stuff. And that's where MK2 introduced Shao Kahn. It peeled back the onion a little bit more, and oh, there's a boss of this boss, and that was, but it was all still text. It was just text that was shown in the attract mode. A lot of players, they didn't want a player to play. They said, wait, I want to see all the stories that are going on.
Don't put the quarter in yet. Hold on.
Yeah, exactly. And some people were just, they just wanted to play the game, but others were just enchanted by the lore of it all and the history, and the films, I think, satisfied a lot of that thirst, because we were still not at a point. It wasn't until like MK4, I think, that before we could show any content that was, not a still image with text, and we can actually start doing animated endings and things like that. All of a sudden, the character would have a voice and was talking and having dialogue, and I think that's a big part of why I think there's some magic of seeing. I remember playing this character, years ago, and there's a film coming out of her. Like there's something magical about it. I gotta see this thing.
Right. Well, before we get to the films, I saw a great interview of very, very young Ed Boon talking about one of the first fatalities, which is Sub-Zero's fatality, and how Tobias showed it to you, and you went, "Oh my God, that is gross. We don't think we could do that." And John was like, "Trust me, violence is going to be part of this." Where did you guys decide? How do you decide to draw the line? Well, I know it's gotten way, way more extreme, but how did you decide to draw the line back then for violence, and kind of what has been the evolution of the violence in the game, and how much you lean on that, how much that's become such a huge part of the Mortal Kombat experience?
Like John actually just verbally described it to me. We were all just sitting around, and what did this happen? And Sub-Zero's spine rip is from Predator. There's this where he's holding the spine of one of the characters that he killed, and we were like, oh, we can do that, And I thought across the line. I said, that's kind of far. But again, nobody was telling us what we could and could not do. A bunch of guys in their 20s are who grew up on R-rated films and things like that. That's the kind of stuff that they're going to come up with. So a lot of the fatalities also because we're just cobbling together images that Johnny Cage has this one where he uppercuts you and your head pops off and it bounces away. There were no additional images that we already had characters with their heads cut off. So I just mocked it up. I just said, okay, he's going to uppercut him and the head's going to fly off and bounce. And it was all kind of software. There was no performance that had it. So we used his uppercut animation and the victim falling to their knees and spliced it together. And there were a number of them that were like that. But Kano's heart rip is from, there was always like a thing of like, oh, he's so fast he could tear your heart out and show it to you before you die.
Yeah.
Like that. So it was all these kind of cliches and things like that. So it was just a bunch of knuckleheads coming up with.
Well, you mentioned the reptile being a secret character in the game, and you had to kind of figure it out. Of all the years that you've been making this game, do you have a favorite Easter egg that you put in?
It has to be reptile. Like if you were to say what were the ingredients to the first Mortal Kombat game that made it special, I think secrets would be one of those check boxes for sure. We didn't document how to do the moves. We didn't document how to do fatalities, hidden features, characters and stuff like that. Because there was no internet of everybody spoiling things, Reptile really lasted. And since then, we've been doing, things like that. And they're always ninjas. Rain was, a purple ninja. And, I'm a huge fan of Prince. And so it's like, okay, let's call him Rain, Purple Rain. And
Right. Wow.
in our most recent game, we had a pink ninja and we named him Floyd because I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan, right?
Right.
And so there's just these kind of pop culture references that make their way into the games.
Okay. So somewhere in 1992-ish, somebody comes and says, we should do a movie based on this video game. Because I know that it takes years to actually come out. And obviously, famously, the first Mortal Kombat movie comes out in 95. Walk me through just those early stages of getting those calls and how that first movie came to be.
We were approached, and again, we had our heads down on Mortal Kombat 2. Mortal Kombat became a beast that needed coal constantly, right? We were in a absolute frantic to keep up with it. Midway Games, the company who manufactured it, they really started leaning heavy into it. So we were down. During all this craziness of MK2, we heard that somebody wanted to make a movie, and it was such a preposterous thing. Think that this game that we put together so quickly, and again, we had no idea how big the mania was. We weren't at all the arcades and the pizza joints and things that everybody was kind of getting their memories, right, and burned into their heads. And so when somebody said it, we said, that's crazy. Our CEO said, hey, if you can do it, we'll, and so they started working on the film. And we flew to Los Angeles and we're on the sets and all that stuff and checking out. But it still was, to some extent, it was still like, they're not gonna release this game. It was just like I don't know. The scope was so big, I just couldn't imagine. Even though Acclaim had made television commercials for the home games and they sold like 6 million of them, and it was, a massive kind of pop culture, permeate through pop culture and the zeitgeist, whatever you want to call it. It just never registered to me, and until 10 years later or something, that this thing really took off.
What was the immediate reaction once the movie came out to the game and vice versa? Like, how did those two things live together after the movie came out?
When the movie came out, we were releasing Mortal Kombat 3 in the arcades. So they played off of each other. There was absolute synergy. The Mortal Kombat 3 was a big deal when it came out, and the movie was huge. I remember a statistic that CNN or somebody had said, like it was like the second biggest August opening ever. And I think like one of the Harrison Ford's A Clear and Present Danger. I don't know, one of those movies was number one. And I remember going, oh wow, that's like pretty big, And,
Okay, yeah.
and it was Mortal Mania at the time. The home games were out, the arcade games were out, the movie was out. It was absolutely in the public eye at that point.
So let's now jump forward to your and my relationship. So I think it's pretty well documented that when I was first brought on to work on the movie by Richard Brenner and Walter Hamada and David Neustadter, that movie had been so long ago that we really didn't know kind of in the franchise. You had moved the franchise in so many cool different ways and evolved it. And by the time I think we were making the movie, Johnny Cage and Sonya had a kid. I mean, you guys were so far past where we thought we would want to go back and start the game. We were so unsure of like where it sat in the zeitgeist, and you guys were in process of being sold. And so
Yeah.
we weren't totally communicating and in sync. We went back and forth and there were emails and you would say, oh, they would never do that. And what is this? And what is that? And we were kind of in sync, but not completely like locked in. And so, we created this new character thinking you needed a way into the movie because people hadn't seen it since 95 and some people didn't even know what Mortal Kombat was. Obviously mistakes were made. And so we went through this whole process. And what I loved about that whole process is, first of all, realizing, I think all of us realizing how many fans there still are of the franchise, and new fans and new generations. And so there's older generations like me and you who played the first games, and I can remember putting my quarters down. You were lucky you had an arcade. I had 7-Eleven. That was my go-to. It was Mortal Kombat, Defender, and Pac-Man. Those were my three games that I had in my 7-Eleven in San Fernando, California. And so the having that movie come out also, it was during COVID, so we really couldn't. We really relied on kind of the internet because you couldn't really talk face to face or see it face to face. Did you go to previews in '95 of the first movie? Did you go and see the testing, or did you just see it once it came out? Well, when did you kind of get back involved with that? Because we had these previews and testing of the first movie when it was COVID, so none of us could really be there. So we just kind of heard about it. Had you been in testing situations before in movies from '95?
No, our exposure was we took one or two trips to Los Angeles, and there were these big, hangars with sets built in them. And I remember seeing the Goro animatronic, like in the corner somewhere. And it's like kind of infamous stories of how difficult that was. It's almost like the Jaws shark. It's like you get your
Goro
2
is a very
seconds
tough character. It's funny. Goro is a very tough character because if you do it animatronics, it's really hard. And if you do him CG, he's really expensive. So I know a lot of the fans in the first movie were like, I can't believe Goro was just in one scene. I'm like, yeah, that scene costs more than most of the movie. So you got to be judicious of how you use these purely CG characters. It's really hard. So yeah, he has always been a tough character to pull off.
Yeah, and in '95, I don't think they even had the option.
No, they did not. No,
Certainly
not like that.
Didn't have the money to do that. And and I don't think it was a huge budget. I didn't see one test screening. One time we were brought a videotape, and we didn't have really the concept, a clear concept of adding a real soundtrack, adding real music and all that stuff. So we saw this thing, and some of them were, things were removed from it, and they were so excited, and I was just like, this thing is going to be a disaster. There was like it was a true lesson in how filmmaking is done. Certainly action movies, but it was cool to see the sets. It was all that stuff, and when we saw that, we were really worried. And but then finally we saw it in the theater. Having that been our last version of it, and it was just night and day. Suddenly it was, it had that to the da, 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 and then something about being in an audience and hearing them get all charged up. It's contagious. It's absolutely there's an energy that goes.
It's so much fun when you see it in the theater. We'll get to then our theater experience together, but. Yeah, people do think the Immortals is from the video game. It's actually from the movie, right? So it's like so interesting because it's now so synonymous with the Mortal Kombat franchise. And people forget like that was just a song that was put in 1995. It wasn't part of the original video game franchise. So we go through the first movie. We got through it in a really interesting and unexpected and kind of delightful way that we found out, wow, there is this big audience for this movie. Oh, these are the things the fans really care about. The internet being the great equalizer in terms of people having a voice. Lots of feedback. It was very important to me and to the studio that we listened to that feedback, I and the studio really reached out to you guys and said, okay, Ed, let's do this together, because you were going through a sale. You guys were under the gun to get your games out during the first movie. Not that you're not now. I know you're still very busy, but it was really, really important to me to have you be involved from the very beginning. And so it was great to have you as a partner as we kind of spun this new story for Mortal Kombat 2 and really got under the hood of what the fans really loved about the first movie and didn't like about the first movie, and course correct, and really get it to a place where we thought, okay, this is what Ed Boon loves, and Dominic, who's amazing and was one of your great storytellers over at NetherRealm. And this is what we believe the fans will want, but it is a movie and we're constrained by physics and time and money. So this is what we can afford and what we can do. And then I had the great fortune of bringing you on set and having you be in the movie, which I know is not a secret anymore. And what's amazing about that is everybody told me this is going to be really hard. We're in Australia. Ed's schedule is really hard, tough. I don't know. We got to get him out here. We got to do it. What party is he going to be? And man, I never worked so hard in my life. I feel like a travel agent at one point, just making sure you got there. And on top of it, the strike happened. And what people may not know, this is a piece of trivia from Mortal Kombat 2. You were our last shot before we shut down for the strike. And Carl Urban was sweet. We knew that we couldn't get the whole scene. And Carl Urban was sweet enough to let us shoot your side first. He came in and did off camera. We shot you. And when we said, that's a wrap on Ed Boon, we shut down for 8 months. You were our very last shot. But tell me your experience of being on set in Gold Coast versus being on set on the first 95 movie. How had your perspective changed? You had some real long history with the game. You'd gone through a couple movies already. Walk me through kind of how you felt that experience went and kind of what was going through your mind as you were walking through our sets in the Gold Coast of Australia.
There were some pretty crazy circumstances with the first film, the 2021, right?
Yep.
There was a lot of stuff going on. There was a certain, like, at some point, I was like, okay, it is what it is. Let's move on. But then you guys made it very clear you wanted to do a collaborative effort on the next one, and I was all for it, but I didn't think you guys were going to do it to the extent you did. Going through.
You didn't realize that when you agreed, you didn't realize how much work it was going to be, is what you're saying.
Well, it was great to be able to collaborate with you guys. Just kind of saying, hey, we really think, fans are certainly gonna like gravitate to this and all that. And going there, seeing it, all the sets was great, and it was much more bigger, grander than the older movies. But to me, it was just the conversations of like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And just kind of collaborating with you guys. To me, it was the absolute best of all the films in terms of my experience, and being heard, and just going back and forth with you all about what we think would be the best thing for the movie. And I'll be vague so everybody doesn't. But our discussions about who should die and who shouldn't die were great. We really felt like that was again. I keep using the word collaboration, but that was a great discussion. I really felt like, we were being heard. You guys were listening. It wasn't just kind of lip service. It was really like, hey, what would be the coolest thing that we could do here? And that to me resonated throughout the whole production.
Yeah, it's so important to me, and I know it is important to the studio as well, that we're delivering what the fans want. Obviously, we can't just say, okay, whatever you want. We have to be forward thinking and thinking about the story and where it's going and where we're headed in the franchise. If we get lucky enough to be able to make more of these, we have to know kind of where we're headed. However, we want to make sure that the fans love it. You know, it's like when you go to a concert to your favorite band and they don't play the hits. You're like, wait a minute, like, come on, like, give us something. So it was important to play the hits. It's important to be surprising and to make fans stand up and go, whoa, I didn't expect that, but still be satisfying at the end, but unexpected, so that they're not just bored because it's some retread of something that they've already seen. And you guys are so great, and it's so amazing to have you as a resource and to be able to say, what about this? Because as you said, a lot of this was four guys in a room in their 20s making it up as they went along. And so the canon is like you said, people take it very seriously and it's their Bible, but it has a tendency to kind of be interpreted in a lot of different ways. And so we have to interpret it in a way that is true to you who created this, but also true to the core of the fan base. But there's always going to be, wait a minute, I thought this was this. I thought this was that. So we're trying to navigate 30 years of backstory into a movie, like I said, that is confined by physics and money and reality. Which is unfortunately what I have to deal with on a daily basis in making the movie. And then we get past all of the strikes, we get past the shooting period, and then you come to your first, this is my favorite part of this process, was bringing you to that first big preview. We were all sitting around and having, we always have dinner in just one of the worst meals you've ever had, restaurants, because it's always in some mall. And we had like this meal and we're all sitting there and you're like, what do you think? How you feeling? And I said, I think it's going to go great, because we had little screenings and we had tried some stuff. We thought, like, what if this happened? And then we tried it and the audience was like, nah, we don't love that. And so we go, okay, well, what if we tried this? Because we were trying to navigate, as you said, some fun, complicated questions. And then, so I felt we had really kind of focused on what I thought was a good movie. And I had Mike and Pam on here a while ago, and Pam said, man, and Mike was like, I can't wait to see it with an audience again, because it was like a rock concert. And so walk me through your experience, because I was sitting very near you, watching you go, holy shit, what is going on? And again, you don't get that in your video game, that kind of feedback. What was it like seeing this thing you created on this massive screen in front of 300-400 hardcore, amazing fans that will, by the way, tell you if you fucked up? So walk me through kind of your experience of living through that from the creator of this, seeing it on that screen.
Well, there was a lot of components. Like, first of all, like, I was surprised that you could show as early of a version of it, because, like, in the beginning there was a hey, this isn't a finished movie. You're going to see some gray box stuff. You're going to see some skies that aren't filled in. But you were still excited about it enough to say, yeah, people they'll get past that and they'll focus on the content that's, that really matters. And so the fact that you did that, like I would never have the guts to one of our games to show something that was as pre-production.
Before we move on, so what people may not know is when you're showing a movie with visual effects in it, like we said, visual effects are very expensive and they come in late. So if you're going to cut a scene, you don't want to have all the visual effects done, because you're just throwing all that money away. So you try to show things that are still green screen, don't have the sets, don't have the look, early renderings of characters, early renderings of backgrounds. And so a lot of stuff is green screen. And what we do is we have a New Line who's great at this, and Warner Brothers are great at this. We have a character, in this case it was Carl Urban, before the movie starts, say, hey, on camera, say, hey, you're going to see some stuff that isn't finished. And we show something that isn't finished and go, but it's going to look like this. And so you say to the audience, so use your imagination, which usually the audience starts laughing. And so look, at the end of the day, the only note you sometimes get is, man, the visual effects were bad. You go, okay, well, we told you at the beginning it wasn't done yet. But we are showing stuff that is naked in a lot of ways, because you want to try to get the feedback for the characters and the story, the things you can control. And if there's stuff that's going to be removed, remove it now, so you're not spending a lot of money and then just throwing that out the window.
So that was certainly a learning experience for me. But the fact that you're still getting that energy was kind of like, yeah, I guess they are looking past it, and they are, getting excited about certain things, giving feedback on others. The other part was how it was more flexible than I would have guessed, because to me, to some extent, I thought, well, the movie is the movie, right? At some point when you're showing it from A to Z, it's not like you can say, okay, let's get rid of this character completely or something. There's a certain part, it is what it is, but it was more flexible. Like there were parts that this part was kind of slow. So you guys trimmed it down and got, we like this character more. There's a little more focus on that. And I suppose it's just the volume of shooting film or whatever that you have available to you to, remove a scene and insert another. That to me was another part of it that was, educational, to kind of see, oh, wow, they can, if there's something that is feeling a little weaker, they could tighten it up and get past it quicker or emphasize on certain things. So, the movie making process was a lot of fun. And also to see, because I think I saw 4 versions before the final one, and seeing it getting tighter, because it was really long at first, and then when it got tighter and tighter, it moved faster. The pacing was better, and at some point, I do remember kind of going, oh wow, this really is taking shape. It is really coming together, and so I was excited to go to the next screening. Right, we had some on the lot, but then some in theaters and whatnot, and I can't believe that the entire movie didn't leak. Like there's so many people respectful of the NDAs that they sign and whatnot. So
Yeah, and it's so much fun when there's like sustained cheers and applause in different moments of the movie, because you go, okay, we gotta get to that.
Yeah.
That's great. Those moments we know are working well. Don't mess with those, and just get to those moments or make the other moments worth it. And man, it was really amazing though. The last preview we had, just in terms of the audience reaction, it was pretty incredible.
One of my favorite stories to tell, because when you say, oh, the collaboration, it's not just us saying, don't do this, don't do that. I remember I wrote in an email, and it was pretty specific. There was this one joke of something that Baraka said, and I said, no, don't do it. Nobody's gonna laugh. It's gonna be ridiculous. And it got the biggest laugh in the whole movie.
Well, I will tell you, myself and David Neustaedter will take full responsibility for that, because you did say that, and I said I made enough action comedies in my life to know this is going to work, and I will take the brunt if Ed still hates it after he sees it. And after that, even like with 100-person, people laugh so much that you turn to me and you go, well, I guess he can say that. I guess that character can say that. But I'll tell you, what's interesting is this goes to what you're saying about this character can't say that line. What is interesting is people do, and I completely understand this, and I feel for the audience in this way, because when we're doing a movie, we're getting feedback in the movie, because we give everybody a questionnaire that's very detailed, and we ask all the things. And of course, this movie tested really, really well, to the point where you could just say, all right, we're good. We got these huge scores. We're good. We're not going to dig in anymore. But you still want to dig in, and you want to listen, and you want to hear what people think in the experience of watching the movie. So in the experience of watching the movie, there's certain things that never came up ever in the screenings. And you said, I think we had 5 or 6 of them. And then, but when people are playing the video game, they so anthropomorphize the character and so become that character, and that character is that version of their character, is the character to them. And you've had 30 years of this, so you keep evolving the characters. But people do have a visceral reaction when they first see something, because they're like, wait, that's not right. That's not the character like I saw. That's not the exact outfit that's the outfit from MK11. That's the outfit from MK6. We are using all pieces that work in the totality of this movie. And so there are certain things that people are commenting on that were done for reasons for the movie. Obviously, these characters are going to evolve, but it's interesting, and I do feel for them. When you see something in a trailer or see a piece of artwork or see a photo, you're like, wait, that's not exactly the way I thought that character would be or look or talk or think or say a line. But when you're watching the movie, even Ed Boon is like, oh, that totally fit. It didn't seem like we were just going for the joke. It seemed like in that moment, that character is honestly expressing this thing that also happens to be hilariously funny and gets a massive. What's interesting about that moment specifically, and people will experience it in the movie and then they'll know what we're talking about, is it comes after one of the biggest laughs in the movie and a huge standing ovation cheer. Then it dips down. Then the character says a line and it brings it right back to that level, which is always really fun. So if you could give the fans one promise about the future of Mortal Kombat, where would you hope that this franchise is headed in your mind?
Yeah, the thing I've been saying over the last few years is I really hope it becomes a forever franchise. I hope it becomes something like DC. Like there will always be DC characters in the medium. There will always be Star Wars, Marvel. I hope that Mortal Kombat, and I certainly don't want to say that it is. I hope it could progress forward to joining a rare category of IP that has a collection of characters that the public will be excited about. Like, you would have The Mandalorian, right? It's like, an offshoot thing, but everybody's still excited about it. You would, I'd love if there was an offshoot of a Mortal Kombat that wasn't necessarily the whole ensemble, but everybody was excited about it because they know who Johnny Cage is, who Kano is, who Sonya is, who, Jax. And just if it's something that everybody assumes will continue going long after I'm gone and long after that, to me is what I hope Mortal Kombat becomes.
And I agree with you totally about that, about all of the spin-offs and offshoots, because you guys have created such a rich, incredible world with so many characters. And that's why, and it is called Mortal Kombat. And so we did struggle with, what if we never kill anybody? Is it really Mortal Kombat? And so that we're balancing that all the time about how that works and keeping the franchise alive in interesting in that way. But my hope for the franchise, as on top of that, is that the fans really feel listened to, embrace it, feel it's their franchise, and that in the places we take it are feel authentic to the franchise, feel the fans feel good about it. We bring in new fans that didn't even know about it that then can go play the game. One of the best things I heard during the whole testing process, I must say, for the first 4 tests we had, we did not tell people it was Mortal Kombat. We said untitled Warner Brothers action movie. So people had no idea what they were going to watch. And when to a person, when we said, you're seeing Mortal Kombat, people would cheer like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But what I loved in the post talk about those screenings was people that hadn't seen the first one loved the second one enough that they said they were going to go back and watch the first one. And these are people that had never played the game, that were just coming in and be like, I love this movie, and now I want to go watch the first one. And they'll probably want to play the game. And hopefully we're going to recruit new fans into our community. That is really important to me. And also in this experience going forward from today to when the movie comes out, I know Warner Brothers feels this way, and certainly New Line feels this way. It is really important that the fans are included. So I personally hope, we're talking about not having just a traditional Hollywood premiere, doing a big fan screening. I personally, and if anybody out there knows these people, I want to invite all the people that you cast in the original game to come to that screening. I want to have the original cast from 95 come to our screening. I want to bring the whole community together for our screenings and bring the fans all together, all the way from when you first created this game to now. I want to invite all of those people that, Bridget Wilson and all of the people who played all the different characters, Johnny Cage and the guys that, John Tobias's 4 buddies that knew martial arts. I want to get them there because I want the fans to see that there's such a great history to what you guys have created that I want to try to embrace everybody in this process because this is a movie for the fans. And we really, really, all of us who worked on this movie, and I know you feel the same way, kept them in mind every day. Every time every day we were shooting, we kept them in mind. And so hopefully this works and hopefully they love it and they let us they let us make a lot more. Now, Ed, I always ask this of all of my guests. The question usually is best memory on set, but I would say to you, please include your video games as a set. And so for the question to you then is best memory on set.
Oh man, there's so many of them. Like you had mentioned, the Scorpion Spear kind of birth was a great one, and then jumping way forward, seeing Martin Ford as Shao Kahn and his whole
Wow.
costume, he's a big guy, like it was a really surreal kind of like, this imaginary character come to life. Like that was a big one. The costume's awesome. That was surreal because that was in Australia and all that stuff. That was a huge one for me. Sitting in those audiences, hearing again, there's nothing like the energy of an audience that is into it and cheering, and you really get nostalgic of like where all this started, where it's become, and all that. Those were big. I mean, and I'm sure I can list 5 more, but like at this moment, those are the big ones that
Fantastic.
jump out in my mind. Yeah,
Fantastic. My favorite on-set moment of Mortal Kombat 2 was seeing you walk on set. It really made me emotional. It made me feel great to have you there. When we finally, it was a long way to get you from Chicago to the Gold Coast, and we were under the gun because we knew the strike was coming. And when you walked into the Village Road show stages in Gold Coast, man, I was so relieved and so happy that we had you there. Because you're important to me and you're important to this franchise. So I really appreciate you, brother. And I, God willing, we get to do a lot more of these together.
yeah. It's such a fun ride. There's so much excitement. I can't wait for May. To everybody to finally see this, and I'm excited for everybody to all the cool stuff that's in this film.
Thanks for tuning in for this episode of The Producer's Guide. If you're a fan of this podcast, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends and family. And if you got any questions about producing, send me a DM on X at Todd_Garner. I want to thank my producer, Steve Delamater. And until next week, I'm Todd Garner. See you then.